Hey folks, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. I'm your host, Tony Edward. On your way in, please hit that subscribe button as well as the thumbs up button and leave a comment below. If you're listening on a podcast platform such as Spotify or Apple, please be sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating. Okay, first up, the Clarity Act gets huge support from Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon. This is huge. Here's the headline. Goldman Sachs CEO backs Clarity Act despite banking industry's concern over stablecoin rules. The Goldman Sachs CEO said the crypto market structure bill would create a more stable regulatory framework, breaking with other major bank leaders who oppose key stablecoin provisions. This is a massive endorsement because it goes against Jamie Dimon and all the rhetoric he's been putting out there, plus the ABA, the American Bankers Association, who has been saying, oh, credit unions and local banks are going to see deposit flight and much more, which is ridiculous, right? And remember, this is now law. The Genius Act is law, and they're trying to retroactively change the law. So there was already some provisions that were made. Some Democrats and Republicans were able to find a compromise, but now the banks want more, right? So they got a cookie, now they're asking for a glass of milk. So it's all ridiculous. It's just they are getting disrupted. They don't want to compete. It goes back to what we've been talking about. They keep the majority of the interest they're earning parking your money at the Fed, and they give you the breadcrumbs, 0.01%. So that's what this is about. Jamie Dimon wants to keep his big bonuses at the end of the year. But the CEO of Goldman Sachs going against that is very good because now it brings some balance to the conversations. So now if the likes of Jamie Dimon and some of his cronies start to bring this up, especially the senators who he's been lobbying, along with Elizabeth Warren, of course, then you have folks on the other side of the argument can say, hey, Goldman Sachs says this is good and it's important for regulating the crypto industry. Now, here's a quote from an interview David Solomon had with Politico. He says, the Clarity Act, like all legislation, is not perfect, and there are lots of things that you could debate and argue about. But I think one of the most important things that it does is that it creates a level playing field to enhance market stability and allow these markets to develop appropriately. I'm very supportive of moving the Clarity Act forward so we can get some market structure in place and start to move the innovation process along. Huge, huge statements here, folks. Big vote of confidence. Now, I know some of you are thinking, why would this bank want to do that? Well, Goldman Sachs is not your traditional commercial bank. They're a major investment firm. So they want to build with the technology and offer crypto investment products and much more. They don't operate like JP Morgan, right? We're dealing with consumers and so forth. But regardless, this again goes back to control. Jamie Dimon and these guys don't want to give up the big bonuses and the power they've had, but disruptive technologies here. And here's an example of some of Jamie's cronies. So apparently, the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce says it represents millions of Hispanic-owned businesses across the U.S. Sent a letter to the Senate leaders this week saying it shares community banks' concerns that the Clarity Act could accelerate deposit flight. The group argues the bill could reduce lending to Hispanic-owned small businesses and weaken investment in underserved communities. This is such BS. Again, there's been a lot of studies that contradict this because the Genius Act is already law. The Clarity Act is not what gives stablecoin yield or allows it, it's the Genius Act. Now, they're saying, oh, if we don't fix it via the Clarity Act, but it's not the Clarity Act has nothing to do with stablecoin yield. It's just the banks are trying to bring this up to relitigate, right? But you see all these folks coming out, oh, you're going to get deposit flight. Who the hell is just going to overnight start putting all their money in stablecoins? That's not realistic. Even myself, as a native crypto user, I've been here since 2016. I have some of my money in stablecoins earning yield, but the majority of my money to pay my everyday bills and my mortgage and much more, it's in the bank, right? So this is really ridiculous. And if you think about demographics, people who are using local community banks and federal credit unions, they're not going to be big crypto adopters right now. Maybe over time as they become educated, they're not going to be rushing to Coinbase or whatever platform. Let me go get a whole bunch of stable coins. And come on, it's ridiculous. So again, this goes back to these guys don't want to lose the power they've had for a long time. And they don't want to offer consumers competitive yield or interest payments on their money. So they're fighting tooth and nail. But nevertheless, guys, the sausage making process continues for the Clarity Act, and there is going to be a vote next week. Nothing happened this week. Here, Anthony Scaramucci gave a quick rundown. I'm not going to read through everything because it's very, very long, but he says the Clarity Act update not passing as per this week, Thursday, July 23rd. Based on publicly available intel, Republicans 51 yes, 2 no, Democrats 2 yes, 45 no. The required number of votes is 60. And he gives a full breakdown of the respective Democrats and Republicans who may be no versus yes, and much more. But it's a very long list to share. So you guys can probably see it on the screen, or you can go to Anthony Scaramucci's X account where he posted this. So again, negotiations are still ongoing on ethics and of course some of the banking concerns. And here, Elizabeth Warren, she's putting out her propaganda. She put out a video on X, stating this bill will help Donald Trump's corruption to make more money. She knows it's not about that, but she's trying to paint the picture. This bill is just for Donald Trump. It's just so he can make another 1.4 billion. Now, I've been on record. I don't like that Donald Trump had a meme coin and much more, but this bill is bigger than Donald Trump. This is about the United States being the leader in the technology, being able to create jobs for people and much more. But Elizabeth Warren, she's a liar. She's being paid off by Jamie Dimon and the banks. We know her MO. It goes back to the Biden administration when she and Gary Gensler were attacking the crypto industry unlawful in many ways. They have ultimately lost, right? We know how that all panned out. But she's still trying. She's still getting those checks from the banks. So she's still doing the bidding of Jamie Dimon and the banksters. And she's going to put out her propaganda. But, I think a lot of people are seeing through it. It is total BS because you have many Democrats who have common sense, like Angela Alsobrooks and others who helped pass the bill through the Senate Banking Committee. And they're going through the negotiations with the ethics, but they want to get the bill passed. Unlike Elizabeth Warren, she doesn't want it to pass at all. But again, she's a bankster puppet. So what can you expect? And speaking of stablecoins and banks, Tassat wants to help smaller banks to tap the trillion-dollar stablecoin boom before Wall Street locked them out. So this is great. Innovate. If you want to compete, innovate. But again, the banksters don't want to give up their big bonuses. But great to see that companies like these are looking to cater to the smaller banks. So Tassat, the fintech firm behind Signature Bank's former Signet blockchain payments network, is building a stablecoin reserve management platform aimed at helping regional and mid-sized U.S. banks compete for stablecoin reserves as the sector is projected to grow into a multi-million-dollar market. The company unveiled Project Nenya, Nenya, otherwise referred to as its smart reserve management and execution engine, on Thursday, alongside a white paper outlining the initiative. Tassat said it expects the platform to launch in early 2027 after pilot programs begin in the first half of the year. The project targets smaller banks that often lack the technology, compliance, and infrastructure and staff needed to service stablecoin issuers. This is how the free market's supposed to operate. Develop the technology, work with a company that can help you make you competitive. And I'm speaking of the banks, right? They should take action instead of whining and complaining and trying to stop innovative technology. But I've often said, guys, innovative technology always wins, and these banks need to get on board, launch their own stablecoins, compete, offer competitive rates on interest payments or yield, right? And then you don't have to worry about consumers going to try to get more for their on their money, right? Imagine that, the concept of giving more to the consumers and your clients. Now, speaking of stablecoins, we got some updates here from Ripple. So Ripple, they posted today saying, meet Ripple Mint, a unified platform for institutions to access, mint, redeem, and manage RLUSD. So that's Ripple's stablecoin, which is on the XRP ledger as well as Ethereum. They said, built for scale with both UI and API access, Ripple Mint gives institutions the flexibility to automate stablecoin operations, integrate RLUSD into existing systems, and manage digital dollar liquidity across chains available to existing RLUSD users today. So big update there. And Jack McDonald of Ripple also highlighted that Ripple has made a strategic investment in Notabean, if I'm saying that right. Notabean is the trust layer for global crypto money movement, powering the largest travel rule compliant transaction authorization network. So he says here, bringing together RLUSD, Ripple Payments, and Notabean's trusted institutional network to help scale compliant stablecoin payments. He says identity compliance, transaction authorization, enterprise ready stablecoin infrastructure. This is how we help financial institutions move value globally with trust built in. So Ripple continues to make incredible moves and build their network of clients and customers and partners. So this is all great. Obviously, as mentioned before, the RLUSD stablecoin is built on the XRP ledger as well as Ethereum. So it is core at its core. It's built on the XRP ledger, but in order to have network effects, you need to have your stablecoin built on other blockchains. But you can have that core home base blockchain, which of course is the XRP ledger. Now, a great place you can invest in the XRP ledger, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all the major crypto assets is on iTrustCapital. You can also invest in gold and silver, but you're doing it via an IRA. And you may say, Tony, why would I want to do that? Well, you get huge tax advantages. So when you sell for a gain, you don't have to pay long-term or short-term capital gains taxes. So this is a huge, huge advantage and something you need to think about, especially if you have a long-term view on these assets. Park it in the IRA and shelter it from the taxes. And you can buy both crypto, gold, and silver 24/7. With regards to crypto, it's over 90 crypto assets, including stablecoins. You can also stake on this platform. And with gold, it's not paper gold or silver, it's the physical assets. If you ever want to redeem the assets, you can do so. And if you have an existing 401k or IRA, you can simply roll it over to iTrustCapital's version. So it's low cost, no monthly fee. They also have a great custody solution called Premium Custody Account. It's institutional grade, so it uses Coinbase Prime, which BlackRock uses. And it's a closed loop system. So if someone hacks into your account, they can't withdraw any funds. It's only set up to go to your bank account. You can go in and out of it 24/7. It's low fees as well. So you got to check out iTrustCapital, see if it's for you. It's a great, great option and a great strategy, again, for reducing your tax implications. And guys, if you sign up with my link, you can get a $100 funding bonus. So go to itrustcapital.com/go/thinkingcrypto. I also put in the description a representative from iTrustCapital that you can reach out to. His name is Ryan. And if you have any questions, you can talk to him during the sign up process. So all the links and details will be in the description. Okay, moving ahead, the SEC sets September talks on move toward 24-hour stock trading. So the Nasdaq, CBOE, and London Stock Exchange are among the major exchanges moving toward longer trading hours. So we've been talking a lot about this, right, guys? So all these folks are looking to go 24/7 because that will allow for faster settlement, movement of assets, more liquidity, more distribution of the assets, many benefits, right, guys? So the SEC, of course, has to make sure this is done right because it involves tokenization and a lot of assets going on chain. So the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is set to host a public roundtable in September to discuss moving toward 24-hour trading in U.S. equity markets. Here's a quote: "We are moving towards a new day and night in the U.S. equity markets," SEC Chair Paul Atkins said on Thursday. "With the expansion to overnight trading, I'm excited at the prospect of U.S. equity markets aligning with those markets that already trade continuously." The roundtable will run on September 17th at the SEC's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Discussions will include preparations to support overnight trading, operations, and resiliency in a 24-hour market, the regulator said. So obviously the vision, it makes sense. The technology's here, but you got to make sure it's executed right, or we could have a lot of problems, right? So the SEC and all the respective regulatory agencies need to be involved, because one of the initial problems you could see is that if there's laggards to adopt the technology and to do this, to tokenize assets, you're going to have two markets. And there's going to be a phase where eventually everybody catches up. But in that implementation phase, if you have two separate markets, you could have price discrepancy, liquidity discrepancy. Certainly, people are going to look to do the arbitrage trade on it. So you got to make sure it's done well, or you can really, really have problems. So I'm really happy to see that the SEC is doing this, and it's definitely the right move. Now, speaking of the SEC settles with Coinbase over its missing Gary Gensler text. Now we know Gary Gensler, under his tenure, did a lot of unlawful things. Remember, he got called arbitrary and capricious, the agency, and all the things they did. Judges scolding them. I mean, it was unbelievable, right? A black stain on the SEC's record. So a new court status reports reveals the agency will pay a flat fee to resolve a 2-year fight over what former chair Gary Gensler knew about Ethereum. So this goes back to the Ripple case and much more. So they agreed to pay $150,000 to settle a FOIA lawsuit over their investigations, according to a joint status report filed on July 22nd. So I believe Coinbase, they were heading up this lawsuit. So History Associates Incorporated and the SEC asked the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia to dismiss the case. After reaching a settlement deal under the agreement, the agency will produce the remaining responsive documents and pay the flat fee to cover the plaintiff's legal fees. History Associates, which provides professional historical research, writing, and archival services to government agencies, filed a lawsuit in June 2024 working on behalf of Coinbase. The firm had submitted 3 public records requests the year before. Those filings sought documents on SEC investigations into Zachary Coburn and Enigma MPC, along with records on how Ethereum shifted to a proof-of-stake system. The lawsuit compelled the SEC to hand over thousands of documents, with the court explicitly ordering the agency to prioritize all records and communications sent, received, or evaluated by then SEC Chair Gary Gensler concerning Ethereum's migration from a proof-of-work blockchain to a proof-of-stake network. Now, the agency said that Gary Gensler deleted some of the text messages and much more. So let's see what we get. I don't know. Some of the phones apparently were wiped. So this is a mess. But we know what Gary Gensler was up to. I don't think there's any question of unlawful activities and an agenda, with his marching orders coming down from Elizabeth Warren and the banks and so forth to attack the industry. All right, moving ahead, Uniswap pushes deeper into tokenized assets with permissioned trading pools. So Uniswap, the largest decentralized exchange, if I'm not mistaken, continues to innovate. And if you recall, BlackRock, they bought the Uniswap token months ago. Many of you may recall that report. So the framework developed with Superstate, Securitize, and DAOGO lets regulated funds and securities trade on Uniswap while enforcing compliance rules necessary for institutions. So institutions want to get involved in DeFi, and of course, tokenized assets will be involved in DeFi, because just imagine you're holding a tokenized version of SpaceX or Tesla or Apple. You can put that asset to work, right? You can borrow, lend, and all those things. So it's great to see that on a decentralized perspective, this is happening. So the decentralized exchanges developer Uniswap Labs is rolling out permission pools on Thursday, a piece of infrastructure that allows issuers of tokenized funds, equities, and other regulated assets to restrict trading to approved investors while using the protocol's automated market maker. That gives issuers a flexible way to enforce their own compliance rules without building separate trading infrastructure. Ken Ng, the head of ecosystem at Uniswaps, told CoinDesk. So institutions, again, want DeFi, and they're going to put tokenized assets in there. So the infrastructure being set up for the massive adoption of this technology, folks. Final news item here out of Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan approves the implementation of strategic digital asset mining and a national reserve. So across the globe, we are seeing many countries and jurisdictions move toward implementing, adopting, regulating crypto assets. No one is banning it anymore. That was back in the day. Now they would be idiots if they did that. The plan is for the capital markets, the governments, and the economies to all run on blockchain rails. Folks, that's the news. Let me know what you think. Leave your thoughts and comments below. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't as yet. Be sure to subscribe to my free email newsletter. It's 100% free on Substack. Check out my book on Amazon. Be sure to grab a copy. It's available in paperback and digital. And check out my course at mycryptocourse.com. This is a comprehensive course that teaches you everything you need to know about crypto. Right now, we got a huge bear market sale going on. Get 50% off the price of the course by using the code BEAR, B-E-A-R, at checkout. So go take a look, folks. And if you want to expand your knowledge, knowledge is power. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you all later.